Security, counterbalance and strategies for Bangladesh. This is a very important session, and we have here with us Dr. Lailafur Yasmin, Professor and Chairperson, Department of International Relations, University of Dhaka, as the chair of this session. And we also have three distinguished panelists: Brigadier General, retired M. Shakhawat Hussain, is a former election commissioner and senior fellow, South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance, North-South University. We also have Ambassador M. Humayun Kabir, President, Bangladesh Enterprise Institute, BEI, and Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed, Professor. And start the procedure.
Okay, now the photo session is over. As we have been seeing for the last 2 days, today is the third day, that we have been speaking about some of the very pertinent issues that affect Bangladesh's politics, Bangladesh's economy, and of course Bangladesh's foreign policy. I've been here in the last session where we were listening to something that to me, coming from international relations background, sounded very alien, very difficult. And I'm sure that, at this point I thought that better, I was saved that I did not have to study economics, and I could get away from all the technicalities of the subject. However, we understand that each of the discipline, they have their merit, and they of course have their contribution in creation of a national perspective and national policies. So right now, what we are going to do, hopefully over the next 1.5 hours, is to talk about Bangladesh's foreign policy, Bangladesh's objectives, Bangladesh's, how it is going to treat through the issues that Bangladesh is experiencing. So here with us we have Brigadier General Shakhawat Hussain, and then Ambassador M. Humayun Kabir, and my direct teacher, Professor Imtiaz Ahmed. What we'll do, we'll be talking about what are the current fragilities in fragilities globally, as well as what are the regional issues, as well as we'll be talking about what are the particular issues that are faced by Bangladesh. I've been requested to talk about 5 to 8 minutes about these issues so that we can set up a context, and then we can leave the floor for each of the speakers for about 8 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes. So what are the issues that we are going to talk about? When we are talking about geopolitical fragility, coming from international relations background, we tend to dissect or describe an incident from using different levels of perspective. So for us, the most convenient level of analysis would be global level, regional level, and of course individual or national level. So here, first at the global level, what are the issues that affect Bangladesh, and what are the issues that are much talked about, much discussed by great powers and by other stakeholders. So firstly, we can see we can talk about the international order. Many of you, even not coming from IR background, would be seeing this being spoken aloud that the international order is collapsing. We have seen that the rules-based there is a arch for establishing a rules-based international order, the definition of which is very much contested. So what is a rules-based order? We see rise of two different type of rules-based order. One is American America-led democratic market-based economy system, rules-based order, and another, some argue that China-led authoritarian rules-based order. However, if we look at, go to different discussions and speak with different stakeholders, we can have a very simple understanding of a rules-based order where countries have their ability to define what is good for them, to assert their sovereignty, and to follow the basic sovereignty principle that countries can defend themselves and countries can make their own choices in international forums. So we can also see, along with rules-based international order, we have seen another interesting characteristics, as Fareed Zakaria calls it, rise of the rest. Who are the rest? As if West is the best and we are the rest of the world is the rest. So Fareed Zakaria, while he used this phrase, rise of the rest, some scholars call it Easternization of the world, or in other words, that international politics, the center of gravity, is gradually shifting towards the East, that is in Asia, being more Asia-centered. Then, of course, third point, as we can see, more maritime focus, that we can see that why the, olden term Asia-Pacific is replaced by Indo-Pacific is not only a geopolitical shift, but it's also to see the area that is now taking part in economic activities more, in global agenda setting activities more. This particular area demands a special attention, and that is why a fashionable term, a fashionable geopolitical construct is Indo-Pacific region. And Indo-Pacific region, often we think that this is connected with only America's IPS, Indo-Pacific strategy, which is not entirely correct, because the phrase itself was coined by Karl Haushofer back in 1920s. So the ideas, that was a Western coinage. And even before that, Mughal Emperor, I think Aurangzeb, right, sir? Aurangzeb coined it long time back. The very idea that Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean can be seen as one flowing geopolitical construct. And then we can also see that plurilateralism, another phrase which is introduced by Indian External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, which means that countries nowadays are more inclined to work with each other on issue-based areas, that you do not have a permanent friend or permanent foe, but permanent interest. So the manifestation of that we can see in plurilateralism in post-Cold War, especially in contemporary 21st century's geopolitics. So these are some of the global shifts, and of course there are rule-breaking incidents. For example, the Russia-Ukraine war, what is happening in Israel-Palestine, all of these will be touched upon by our speakers today. At the regional level, we can see that South Asia is once again seen as a very interesting area, because not only it is at China's backyard, although the word backyard means backyard is where we dump everything, right? It has a very negative connotation, but adjacent to China. So thereby, South Asia has its own strategic significance, which is more and more recognized by great powers. And then we can also see, for Bangladesh's perspective directly, we can see Bangladesh is increasingly being identified as a gateway to South Asia, because which country other countries are interested to work with, because the Bay of Bengal, through Matarbari multimodal projects and more of such projects, Bangladesh can be a gateway to Northeast India, Bangladesh can be a gateway to landlocked countries of India and Nepal and Bhutan, and therefore we can see that how Bangladesh is often considered as a pearl of the Bay of Bengal. So there is a huge sort of geopolitical significance of Bangladesh, despite economists may have many other different kind of predictions, but we know that why great powers are coming here. There are so many lures, and at the same time Bangladesh is directly being affected by what is happening in Myanmar, and that is a spillover regional implication. That is a global implication even. At the same time, we can see that we are hosting 1.1 million Rohingyas, which is, as Sir famously reminded us, that more than the population of Bhutan, right? To our Australian friends, I often tell them that Dhaka is a city that hosts the population of entire continent of Australia, and give us some credit that we are managing it. How bad it might seem at times, but we are managing it. And there are so many other sort of aspects that often we take it for granted, but we do not discuss often. We do not write about it often. And therefore, when you do not write your own story, other person will be writing it for you from their vantage point. That is why there are so many, we have this imperative that we start talking, we start writing our own stories. Hopefully some of those stories will be, will be talked about today. If I may now turn to Shekhawat sir first, 8 to 10 minutes, and I'll give you a reminder when it's 8 minutes. And we spoke about 3 particular issues yesterday, and if you can please, sir, talk about those. Sir, there is.
Sorry? Okay. Thank you very much. Am I audible at the back? Thank you so much, Dr. Nalufar. The first thing that I am really sweating, the very reason is not because of the air condition, but because of these sitting with these luminaries who are expert on international orders and relations, all these, whatever the connotations are. What I understand, I think I'm going to explain that. Maybe not in the order the madam has already asked me. First of all, these talking about multipolar world and talking about bipolar world and talking about unipolar world. But to my understanding, I grew up, if I may say, in a bipolar world. I grew up in a bipolar world when we found that 2 powers are actually pulling and pushing the smaller countries, particularly those countries, post-colonial countries. And we were very much in fix. Yesterday I was talking in a media, and I said, what's wrong now? The only thing which I feel that the post-Second World War saw demise of one great power, rise of another great power, and it was smooth transition. We didn't feel that the British Empire was dying, which had ruled more than half of the world, and they was losing power. They were begging to save them from the colonies. And what happened in Second World War, I'm sure all the students know, I don't have to tell. Then comes USA, which has been a power, but not to that extent in a world power. They flattened Europe, and they came with Marshall Plan. They flattened Japan, 2 cities, and they came with economy. So they imposed themselves to be a new world order, and that because the other power had died. Let's come back to 21st century. Why we are sitting here and talking about multipolar world? I'm not seeing any multipolar world yet. Who controls World Bank? Who controls ADB, for example? Who controls all other world organizations? That includes military and non-military. Who controls United Nations, for example? Has anybody asked that United Nations should be get out of New York and come to somewhere in Hanoi or wherever it is? Nobody. So to me, talking about multipolar world, yet I'm talking in front of the teachers, but I don't think that we are still living in multipolar world. We are being visited by the members of NSC of United States of America. The reasons, not yet clear. It's IPS. And to me, what is IPS? It's the imposition of unipolar world, then talking of multipolar world. It is nothing but a clash between one rising power and one is already established power. And the rising power, unfortunately, does not belong to the category of the former British power or American power. They are Mongolites, they look like us, they're the Asian. Therefore, this power must be prevented, and we are aiding to it. That's what I study. Maybe I may be contradicted by other two scholars, but that's what I understand. Coming back to the regionalism, now many people say that, well, there's a rising power within the ASEAN, that's India. I differ with it. India does not control any financial institution which can really influence. Neither China does, but China is trying to make up BRICS and this and that and other. Therefore, still, the financial control of the world is not with China, nor with any other power, but with USA. Now, clash between China and USA is nothing who is more powerful. To me, it is an alien power as far as Europe is concerned, as far as the Americans are concerned. It's an alien power which is coming and trying to influence Afro-Asian countries, which were once, the word I don't want to pronounce as backyard, once was backyard of the superpowers, colonial power and then the unipolar superpower. Here we are, a very small country. To me, geopolitically, we have, location-wise, we have no significance. Area-wise, only young population is there. The only, probably the most important thing that we have a bay, we have access to warm water and goes into straight to Indian Ocean, and we are very close to emerging world power. I'm not talking about Asian power. And we are very close to one egoistic power which wants to be equal to the another Asian rising superpower. So we are in between these two, and that's why everybody is looking at us that which side we are going. Are we going towards north or are we going to the west? And here's a tussle. And in that tussle, coming back to the region, what are we facing? We are facing, as far as I'm concerned, two problems. Number one, a foreign policy. We are not privy to it. We only know that friendship to all, malice to none. But does it function? Nehruvian theory has gone. So I don't know. I think I will leave it to these two experts. But as far as I'm concerned, now I'm confronted with a very complicated situation what is emerging in our eastern neighbor. I'm more concerned about Chin and Rakhine State, which is going through a turmoil. We really don't know where it is going to end up. Is it going to end up with the north or is it going to end up with the west? And I am in here, I am being dragged here and there. And that's what these days we are seeing the people are coming to Dhaka and talking about IPS or IPO. What do we do with IPS? We have to declare that we are with you against somebody else. Can we afford? Can we afford, like small country of Bangladesh, we have to think. And just saying by plain that friendship to all, malice to none doesn't work these days. Somehow, this is what the slogan is. I don't know inside. Yesterday, I was with Mr. Momin at 8 in Channel 71. He just brushed aside here and there, and he didn't reply to all of those questions which were asked to him. So my understanding is that we are still not very sure where to go. There is a pull with sack of money, and there is a push with power. And then, of course, our business-oriented and business, whatever, is totally dependent on, you may call it, the master of unipolar world. And unipolar world is going to remain dominant for years to come. Multilateral or multipolar world is yet to emerge because the China, I'm talking about, does not have that muscle to challenge the existing superpower, dollar to dollar, strength to strength, ship to ship, aircraft carrier to aircraft carrier. It's only America now who can control more than two oceans at a time, who can still fight. Whether they're defeated or not, that's a different story. They can still fight in multi-state and multi-region simultaneously. Therefore, the other power has to acquire that strength, which will take a lot of time. At present, we are in fix what to do, what is happening in Myanmar, and we are hosting, she said 1.1, or I say 1.5, because in 7 years' time, they have multiplied, and it will keep on multiplying. So the ahead, I was telling also yesterday, we were sitting in one place, I said, it's not America, it's not China, it's not India has so far given any solution. We have to work our own solution. Leave aside, let the slogan remains, friendship to all, values to none. But we have to decide which way we should go. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, with the permission of the chair, thank you very much, my dear panelists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I should say a big thank you to SANEM and particularly Professor Selim Raihan for inviting me and to have given us an opportunity to share some thoughts here. So, Professor Lailofer has laid out the landscape. I'm not a scholar, I cannot claim that, but I am an observer. Since my career was in diplomacy, so that gave me an opportunity to observe how things are shaping up, how they are changing, and so on and so forth. So from that perspective, I'll try to bring out a few thoughts. In my view, here they have rifts or the shifts that are taking place now. Since I have worked in Washington and also in New York at the UN, so had some kind of exposure to see how things are evolving, and also in India. So that gave me some opportunity to look at how different countries are looking at, different combination of countries are looking at the world from different perspectives. So in my view, the changes are now taking place at a rapid pace. There's no question about that. Now, what are the general trends there? Or what we can see, if we look at from Bangladesh, what changes we are now seeing which might impact us or countries like Bangladesh, for example. 3 layers we can look at. The first layer is, I call it a norm shift in global norms. Professor Lailofer has mentioned about the global order. So global order is basically premised on initially on the ideas. What was the idea? And the idea was that the international community is composed of the sovereign states, and sovereignty has to be respected, and all should work or enjoy the equality, notional equality, not physical equality. And nobody's sovereignty.
This is working. You just hold it like this.
Fine. Nobody's sovereignty should be encroached, and the United Nations or the major powers should ensure the peace and security of the world, as manifested in the UN Security Council, P5s as we call them. The United Nations after the Second World War came into existence with the understanding or with the premise among the great powers at that time, 1945, that they will work together at the Security Council to ensure that global peace and security is not disturbed or can be resolved peacefully, what they call as a collective response or collective responsibility. Now, if you look at this global scenario for the last, say, I'll not go too far behind, but since 1991, what we are seeing is that understanding about consensus or having some degree of understanding among global powers, that is fraying now. You can see that the sovereign equality, then how do we explain Iraq, what Americans did in Iraq? How do we explain what Russians at that time, Soviet Union did in Afghanistan in 1979? Or how do we explain what is happening in Syria, for example, today? So it symbolizes the fact that the consensus on which the global center, if I may put it, global center as symbolized by the United Nations was structured. Now it is fraying, and that's why we don't have any consensus on Syria, we don't have any consensus on Ukraine, we don't have any consensus on even on Rakhine and with the Rohingyas, for example. So this is a huge shift that we are seeing, that the essential premise on which the international structure was built up, that has frayed. So that's number one. And second thing is, sovereignty was considered to be sacrosanct. But now, after 2001, we are seeing theory of preemption. If I consider that you are a threat, I can go and hit you, doesn't matter where you are. So the very concept of the sanctity of sovereignty is gone. And you can see drone attacks throughout the world by different countries against other countries. So nobody is safe. No longer anybody can claim that my sovereignty is a sacrosanct. Nobody can encroach that. Now, under any excuse, that can be done by any country. Remember that. And by the way, as Brigadier General Shakawat Bhai has mentioned, we think that, well, a lot of things are coming, a lot of changes are taking place, different poles are coming up, but essentially everybody, all of the powers. I visited China, almost go regularly and can see that China wants to become like the US. I go to India, I served in India twice. I can see India is trying to become US. So every country wants to be like the US. So where is the multipolarity that we are talking about? Or everybody is trying to mimic the United States or the Western world. So that's one issue that we have to also think about. So coming to the point, norm world is shifting, and we are living in an uncertain world. Now, sovereignty is no longer a guarantee that you will be safe. Privacy, human rights, no guarantee. Everybody is being spied on, and it is done legally. The Americans are doing it, the Indians are doing it, Chinese are doing it, so it is now done. So where is the right from human sanctity or human personal, you can say, dignity, right up to the state sovereignty? Things have changed now, and at the norm world, we are in a big transition. I don't know where we are ending up at the end. Look at structurally, the world, the order after the Second World War was basically developed under around three basic structures. One was the United Nations for political issues, then the Britain World Bank and other structure for economic issues, WTO for trade issues. All of these institutions are now almost dysfunctional. United Nations, as I have mentioned, WTO, for almost 2 years or 3 years now, the WTO is not functioning properly because one of the major elements of or units of the WTO is the dispute resolution mechanisms. Different countries have to appoint the judges. There's no that system is not functioning. WTO was the center of all global trade management. Now different countries are following there. The FTAs are coming, new groups are coming up. So WTO, as we had anticipated, is not playing that deserved or desired role, for example. And for the developing countries like us, who are major powers or major partners or major actors, for us it's a very difficult situation. Currently, just to give you a statistics, the global trade is around $26 trillion. $26 trillion. Out of that, 46 LDCs together, we don't even contribute 1%. So understand our relative position in the global trade context. Even at that situation, what role or what voice we can have at the WTO. So we don't know. We are almost now at the mercy of other bigger powers and so on and so forth. So the institutional structure that we had earlier, or on whom countries like us could depend as a guardrail, those are also under severe threat, and we don't know where they are heading. The third point I should say, and I'll conclude with that, the structure, practice-wise, a lot of things are changing. For example, I mean, now you can see not only the states are violating each other's sovereignty, but non-state actors are the new factors. United States had to negotiate with Taliban to ensure their exit from Afghanistan. Today, Hamas and Israelis are fighting. So it means that the practice world has also transformed significantly, and that could perhaps complicate the situation. And economic world also is changing. We can see US is sanctioning China. Other countries are doing the same thing. And economic nationalism is also growing. So these are all very difficult situations for countries like Bangladesh. And coming to Bangladesh particularly, as has been already mentioned, I will just only say there are other strategic threats. If you look at Myanmar, if you look at India, we are seeing radical nationalism is rising. So radical nationalism can be a difficult proposition because that can inflame, that can spread fires, not only within that country, but it can spread fire around the region. We have seen how majoritarianism destroyed Yugoslavia, how other countries have suffered in Syria and other countries. So we have to be careful about how the region is evolving, not only Rohingya. Beyond Rohingya also, how Myanmar is evolving could have a serious impact on us. How India is evolving could have serious impact on us. And on the economic front, if you go, we had SAARC. I don't know where it is. SAFTA is there, but how far it is working. So we are seeing a strong trend of bilateralism in our economic relationship. Compared to larger partners, what kind of leverage do we have? And we can only have leverage provided we are domestically strong. We have domestic consensus on fundamentals. A storm, we can see the storm brewing up in the outside world. The only defense line that we can have is our own strength. So that we should take care of and cultivate and try to forge. Only then Bangladesh can navigate in this difficult situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me thank Salim first and rest of the people who are working behind this 3-day conference. It's good that I'm the last speaker because I have to differ with both of them, the understanding of the world. Let me put them into 5 or 6 points, I think, and then we can have an open discussion. I always hesitate to pick things in 5, 6, or 10 minutes. As a social scientist, it's very difficult. We live in a complex world, and so when media people tell me you have to speak in 2 minutes, it's really, really hard for me. But let me give a shot, and we can come back during the Q&A to explain some of the things. The first thing is, what we are experiencing is a fluid multipolarity, not a rigid multipolarity. And is different from a rigid bipolar and a less flexible unipolar. Now, the reason why we are moving towards a fluid multipolarity is because for the first time in history of capitalism, production has become international. Production was never international. Read 3 volumes of Marx or Lenin, even the imperialism, the higher stage of capitalism. They never thought that production can be international. Production is now international. What it means, whatever I am wearing, you can say it is made in Bangladesh, but it means very little. The cotton comes from somewhere, the machine comes from somewhere, the design comes from somewhere, and of course, it gets assembled here. But it's not with only the ready-made garments. Same with Toyota car, same with IBM computer, the iPhone that you use, it's made in different places, and then it gets assembled somewhere else. Now that is a different kind of production system that even the classical capitalist theorists never saw. And this is bound to change the world. One, of course, decolonization. The very fact that West and United States, they developed is because of slavery and colonialism. Please don't forget that. Don't forget the role of slavery. And don't forget colonialism. 200 years of colonialism, don't forget that. When the British came to Bengal, Bengal was the richest province in South Asia, and South Asia was the second largest economy in the world, and I'm talking about 18th century. And South Asia, or Indian subcontinent, used to contribute as much as 22% of the world economy. When they left, it was 2%. Where did the 20% go? Go to British Museum and you will see it. So let's not, have a long history, understanding of why these changes are affecting the West so much that really they've got into panic mode. So the first thing is, it's a fluid multipolarity because of globalization, because of production. Because you cannot have a rigid multipolarity at all. Now, the second one is, this multipolarity is bound to create more options for policymakers, and one has to be smart to utilize the options. If you're not smart, you can't utilize the options. You have to be smart. Now, a lot of people would say that our Prime Minister was very smart with 7th January election. She was, definitely. You have to give her credit. The amount of pressure that she was facing, not from outside, from within. Because, some countries would have their chamchas here. Don't forget about that. And the chamchas play a role. You see, the British could enter Bengal not because of the merit of the British, but of the chamchas like Mir Zafar, Umiched, Jagat Seth and all. And none of them were Bengalis. Mir Zafar was an Arab by birth. He was not a Bengali. Jagat Seth was not a Bengali. Umiched was not a Bengali. None of them were Bengali. Only the foot soldiers were Bengalis who refused to fight. For them, thank you very much. There must be some chamchas around here. Anyway. No, it hasn't come back. Oh, it has come back. Okay. So, I forgot what I was saying anyway. But yeah. So the foot soldiers were Bengalis, and they refused to fight because for them it did not matter whether it was Clive or Mir Zafar, because both were foreigners. Let's put it that way, and simply put. But keep in mind, Bengal at that time was the richest province, and people have forgotten Bengal, very unfortunately, how we have contributed to the world economy, and not to mention, the giraffe went from Bengal to China. China had no recognition of giraffe. It went to two princes, went to celebrate the Forbidden City, and that was the time when the Bengal prince took them to China. Anyway, so in this multipolarity, the policymakers will have more options to play around. And we see that in living, how our political leaders are using those options. And we have seen, even with the election, how, how China was voicing, how Russia was talking about, and then the United States, of course, with all, the good feeling they have for us. And India also had to come and say, look at the interplay and go back to the previous elections. That's the best way, for a researcher. Go back. You will not find that kind of complex, words that were coming from different powers. Now, that's the second one. Third one is, in the age of fluid multipolarity, keep in mind it's not a rigid one, what is happening is the dialectic of inside-outside is bound to play a role in interstate relations. Now, when I say the dialectic of inside and outside, as I mentioned, whatever you're wearing has an inside, but it has an outside. Whatever has an outside has an inside. The supply and demand that we read in classical economics is absolutely meaningless now. Because in supply, you will find a little bit of, the other round, or of demand and the demand versus. So it's a dialectic. Similarly, the export and import, that's the other one can, to understand the inside and outside. Whatever export and import, these figures have become meaningless because in export you will have import contents and in import you will have export contents. That's the dialectic. That has never happened. So I always say when you do a national budget, it's meaningless because budget can never be national at all. It can't be. It's impossible. So you need to find a new word for that. And that's the reason we suffer, sometimes we suffer from our lack of conceptualizing things. Number fourth is, people globally will become more conscious of their being in the age of multipolarity. Don't underestimate the consciousness of human beings. Human beings are far more conscious now than ever. Historically, if you look into, look some of the discussions that take place in the Facebook. Not that I'm into it, I don't participate, but I observe. Fascinating. Just look at the cartoons that come up in the Facebook, just the cartoons. If somebody would just note down the cartoons. I remember the COVID-19 pandemic, and I had to do it because I was, writing a book on COVID-19, so I used cartoons. Super cartoons came up, right? Sorry. Right? Okay. The super cartoons that came up. So humans are more conscious now than ever, and that is where the technology comes. And this is my fifth point. The fourth point, the humans will create newer technologies to meet the growing demands for interactions and make a difference in how the real is understood. You see, understanding the real is not easy. Because sometimes and often, whatever we see in the television or whatever we read in the newspaper, we take that to be real. But humans are smart now. They don't accept that. And I think the best example would be one good example would be the Russian-Ukraine war. We were not depending on BBC and Voice of America on Russia-Ukraine war. We were actually literally, us as researchers, we were looking for alternative news media. Absolutely. Somebody who is in Ukraine giving us news. Somebody who is in Moscow giving us news. So this very powerful media of BBC and Voice of America is no longer there. That's gone. And they will not recover because they have spoiled, whatever they were doing at one particular point. Number fifth is, and here why I say that I differ, Bangladesh is better placed when it comes to multipolarity because of its foreign policy principle. Friendship towards all, malice towards none, absolutely is a fascinating foreign policy principle. Why? Because it was developed during the height of Cold War. Not now. Not even after independence of Bangladesh. The first time it was mooted, now that the intelligence reports are coming out of Bangabandhu, first time it was mooted in 1966 when police heard Bangabandhu talking about friendship towards all, malice towards none. And then it was codified, legalized, or absolutely made into what I would say a text. That was in 1970. The first time it came out in Awami League's election manifesto in 1970, before independence, that friendship towards, malice towards none. Read that manifesto. It's a historical, it's a fascinating manifesto, I would say. Because the next text tells, the next text or the clause is clearly mentions that if we come to power, we will get out of CENTO and SEATO. And now you see why the United States is not so happy. Now you know why something like 15th August has happened. You can read Lawrence Lifshell's book, but there are other books also on this, on 15th August tragedy. So it was flagged when we had a serious bipolar world. Now that the world multipolar, it makes easy for Bangladesh to work. And if anybody wants to work on 7th January election, you can see how it worked superbly well, because the X number of actors, that's not one actor who can determine things. There are other actors as well, equally important. And some of them are re-rise, India or China, even I would say Brazil. These are not rise of India or rise of China. It's a re-rise. Because in the 18th century, China was the largest economy in the world. China did not come up, from, it's not 60, we have a longer history, civilization speaking, than the United States. And the United States became fully democratic only in 1968, don't forget. 19% could not vote until 1968. So keep those in your mind, and then you will understand why we have this politics of and fascination for United States. Now, I'll end by saying, for Bangladesh to make the best of fluid multipolarity, this fluid multipolarity, it has to focus on two things. One is professionalism. One can use the word meritocracy, but I think professionalism will also do, because you need professionalism in order to interact with all these polarities. And these are very different polarities. You need to learn the languages not only of English, but as much as French, or Hindi, or Portuguese, or Chinese, or Japanese, or Russians. X number of languages you need. If you want to really know what Russian-Ukraine war is about, you need to know Russian language. Then you would understand what's actually happening at the ground level, because when they are talking, at Donetsk, then you can see, okay, this is what is happening in Ukraine. So that's one part of it. And the second one is the elite of Bangladesh must have their two legs in Bangladesh. The elite has one leg outside. That's the problem. It's a serious problem. So we don't only have, bulk of the elite children are living abroad. Going for study is not a problem, but they don't return. They settle there. And the other problem is it's not brain drain, it's also asset drain. Because by the time they grow old and retire, they also join their children. Then who is going to develop Bangladesh? I can talk about Dhaka University. None of the elite children study now in Dhaka University. None. Zero. The university which created the elite of Bangladesh. And I would, humbly request Salim to take a research on that. This is the university which created the Bangladesh elite. None of their children study in Dhaka University. How can you make Dhaka University Harvard? Impossible. So the point here, multipolarity gives you an option of working with countries, and there is no way to roll back multipolarity. No roll. Decolonization, you can't go back to recolonization. And India is going to emerge as China has emerged, Brazil, Nigeria, Turkey, even look at Saudi Arabia. And my last point, because Lalifa sent some of the things last night, so one thing was on Myanmar. Since Myanmar is now in our head, so let me answer to that and stop. On Myanmar, given the current context and emerging multipolarity, Bangladesh needs to engage with India and China in a much bigger way, including activating the dormant initiative called BCIM, Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar. Why I'm saying that? If there's a Q&A, probably I'll explain that because I think I've taken more than 8 minutes. Thank you very much.
Yes. Sir, you have taken 2 minutes each from each of the speakers and more than that, but we have all been very benefited learning about views from not only Sir, but from Humayun Sir and Shakawat Sir. It's extremely difficult to summarize, but I'll just sort of remind you of a couple of the significant points that have been made. As Sir pointed out, that, in a number of ways, just a second. Yes, the clash between rising power and established power, which is extremely significant, Bangladesh's size and whether Bangladesh has much leverage in this particular multipolar world, and can we also, Sir pointed out, can we afford to take a side? This is a very significant question. Humayun Kabir Sir pointed out the normative shift in the idea of sovereignty, that having legal sovereignty merely no longer can ensure survival. And then, of course, the rise of non-state actors. And Imtiaz Sir pointed out that how this is a fluid multipolarity, multipolar system, and here, what are the options how can Bangladesh reap the benefit of this particular type of multipolarity that we have not seen historically before. And of course, the transition from bipolarity to multipolarity, it has been extremely painful, and it had different effects for different countries. And how can Bangladesh actually navigate through that? And of course, the role of Bangladesh engaging with India, China, and Myanmar issue, how Bangladesh can manifest. These are some of the issues that have been touched upon. Due to the paucity of time, of course, we were not given about 30 minutes each, or else it would have been a different ball game. So I would invite questions from the, even before I could finish. My God, I'm happy. My eyes saw the lady with specs. Yeah, first, please. Please introduce yourself, and if you want to ask any particular person, also mention that. Yeah, no, a bit louder. It's not working. Yeah, it's not working.
Yeah, it's okay.
Hello, yeah. So I have two questions, both to Shakawat Sir and Humayun Kabir Sir. One question is that due to the rifts of the global order, how it may have impact on Bangladesh. So what are the what are the symptoms we can see, and what could be our strategies in kind of foreign policies? And the second question is that as a learner, I want to know that on what circumstances and grounds the economic sanctions are made in countries. So yeah, I want to know this from both of them actually.
And you are?
I'm actually SAEC student right now, but previously I was involved in startup ecosystem, and also I have also worked with Bangladesh Foreign Ministry to serve as a conference aide, and yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hilal Ahmed, Dean School of Business and Economics. As you suggest, I'm trespassing here. Um, I'm an economist by temperament, training, and practice. And so just to reassure my student colleagues here that supply and demand is the most influential tools we use, so it's not irrelevant. So don't lose your faith. And the other thing, Professor Imtiaz, reverse migration is not very popular, but it's happening. And I'm probably a living example. After spending most of my adult life, I come back and serve in the university. Now, the point I was trying to make is a few observations before I ask the question. The first observation is multipolarity is reality, but at the same time, the channels of influence is not limited to military or diplomacy. These days, economic channels, information channel, all those things are used effectively to influence. So these are all realities. Now, oftentimes, we talk about horses for courses, and definitely there is no one single solution for everything. Now, the objective of this kind of strategy is to achieve something. That's the end goal. And diplomacy and coping with multipolarity and all that are ends to that end. So I'm just wondering whether the Bangladeshi diplomacy and international policy and all that should be guided by something that we all care for. Is it our standard of living or what? Thank you.
Thank you very much for all the panelists. It was an excellent discussion. I learned a lot. I have a maybe little bit naive question. It goes to all the panelists. Actually, of course, we unipolar world, bipolar world, or there is also debate whether we multipolarity or not. Brigadier General Shakhat Hossain, he says that no. The established power and another power is trying. It is not, we are not still in a multipolar world. However, world order is some sort of shifting, some changing, and that. And that is a brings challenge for country like Bangladesh, all that. And our ambassador, Humayun Kabir, said that to address this challenge, fluid situation and uncertainty, we have to be very strong in domestic issues, domestic consensus, all that. And Professor Imtiaz Ahmed said we have to be smart. Of course, we don't know what smart we are or that. And my question to all the panelists, how smart we have been in dealing with this changing situation that is affecting us, whether it is Indo-Pacific or Myanmar or Bay of Bengal or BIMSTEC. How we are doing really? How is our performance? Maybe it looks judgmental, but I expect you speak on that a little bit. Thank you very much.
Hello, this is Samia, currently a student of economics at Jahangirnagar University, but it gives me great pleasure to attend this interdisciplinary lecture because I was previously a student of international relations, direct student of Lalufar Yasmin ma'am, although I did not have the privilege to attend SAR's class. So what my question is that it's actually related to diplomacy in economics, because as I've seen that diplomacy increasingly becomes important for economics, that upon LDC graduation we have this debate that whether we should go for bilateral treaties in trade or multilateral treaties in trade for which will benefit Bangladesh more. And it's not only in terms of trade treaties but rather also about debt financing and allying with various countries. So what are the prospects of Bangladesh in that term, which direction should we go for those benefits? And I had another question, and that's Sir talked about international production, which is very true. So integrating Bangladesh in the global supply chain, what can be the role of diplomacy in that? So thank you.
We'll take two more questions and then come back to the panelists.
Assalamu alaikum. আমি সাইব আহমেদ ইমন। আমার কোশ্চেনটা একটু বাংলায় করতে চাচ্ছি। জি, মেইনলি আমরা 30 বছর হয়েছে আমাদের নদী চুক্তিটা 1996 আমার বয়সের সাথে সাথে 30 বছর হয়তোবা সামনে চলেই আসবে 2026-এ। সো আসলে আমরা ডিপ্লোম্যাটিক রিলেশনে কতটুকু নিগোসিয়েশনের জায়গাটা, আপনি পররাষ্ট্রমন্ত্রীর কথা বললেন, ইন্ডিয়ান পররাষ্ট্রমন্ত্রী, তার পজিশনটা অনেকটাই স্ট্রং। সে রিসেন্ট যে কোর্টগুলা করতেছে বা তার কাছে মনে হচ্ছে যে আমাদের জায়গা থেকে কি আসলে আমরা পররাষ্ট্র নীতিটাকে কোন দিকে দেখছি সেই ব্যাপারটা, যেহেতু স্যার আছেন, প্রফেসর স্যারও আছেন। সো আলটিমেটলি স্যার অনেক দিন ধরেই নদীর কাজ করেন, আমি ওনার অনেকগুলো প্রোগ্রামে অ্যাটেন্ড করেছি। সো এই ব্যাপারটা আসলেই আমার খুব জানার ইচ্ছা যে আসলে আমরা এই জায়গাটা, যেহেতু আমাদের ফুড সিকিউরিটির সাথে আমাদের ফ্রেশ ওয়াটারটা খুবই মানে আলটিমেটলি এটা আমাদের দরকারি, এটা না ছাড়া ইফ দেয়ার ইজ নো রিভার দেয়ার ইজ নো বাংলাদেশ। সো আমার কাছে এটা সবচেয়ে বেশি কনসার্নিং জায়গা অ্যাজ এ সিটিজেন, অ্যাজ এ বিজনেসম্যান, অ্যাজ এ মানে দেশের জন্য আমি চিন্তা করছি। জি, আসসালামু আলাইকুম।
Hello, this is Mohammad Mustafa, senior year student of Department of International Relations, University of Dhaka. My question is to Imtiaz sir, who is a direct teacher of my direct teacher, Professor Lailafar Yasmin. Even if we don't consider the current world as a multipolar, we know that the world is slowly but surely shifting towards a multipolar world. In a multipolar world, there will be more players other than USA, India, Russia, and China. Although balancing India and China will be a constant headache for us, which of the countries can we target for benefiting our trade and economic ties? So, thank you.
Yeah, we'll first have the panelists answer this segment of questions, and then we'll take more questions. And let me just add how happy I feel when I don't have to answer the questions for a change.
Go ahead. I can either add or something.
Sure. Yes. Smart Bangladesh. I think we have been smart, the very fact that we have survived 50 years. We were bottomless basket. Some of you were not born, but back in 71, I was a class 9 student. I left my parents, I went to Agartala. I literally slept on the pavement, literally, on the first night, because we did not get a place to stay. So when I look back in 71, and then when I see now, with all the ups and downs, look at the ups and downs. Look at some of the big tragedies that went through Bangladesh. Not to mention genocide. 10 million refugees. Just imagine. And then within 3.5 years, you have 15th August, 1975. And then it goes on and on. Don't forget 21st August. That's also very important. Some of these dates are absolutely important. So from there, if you take Bangladesh, I think we have done pretty well in terms of interacting with everyone. That's the reason why I say that principle, foreign policy principle, absolutely is brilliant. And several months back or a year back, I said that Zelensky would have survived if he knew our principle, Because you can change a lot of things, but you can't change your neighbor. Keep in mind, you can never change your neighbor. It's geographically conditioned. Simple. You can change a lot of things in the world, but not your neighbor.
If you compare.
So, if you compare. You have the colonized mind. I can see. Yeah, the legacy continues, I believe. So I think we did fairly well. The very fact that Bangladesh is 7th or 8th largest country in the world, it's already in the first 30 or 35 of the economies. Take it that way. First 30 out of 194 now of the countries in the world. You know, it's not a small country. Wherever I go, I never feel small, and they don't treat me small, even with my height. So my point here is, you know, you have to know your civilization first. And this is a cartographically massacred Bengal, don't forget. East Bengal is a cartographically massacred Bengal, and the British did it deliberately. They did it deliberately. When we talk of Bengal, it's always Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. That is what Bengal is all about. It was cartographically massacred deliberately, and we fell for it. But even with that cartographically massacred Bengal, there is a re-rise of Bengal or Bangladesh, I will say. So I think we have done pretty well. Very quickly on the diplomacy, yes, you need to, you know, with the globalization, you need to bring new things. And one thing I've been flagging for years is that the diaspora has to be brought in. You see, they can play extraordinary role. The Chinese diaspora really played extraordinary role in the development of China and India's development here. The difference between Chinese diaspora and Indian diaspora doing it, the Chinese diaspora are less excited about American dream because they have their own Chinese dream. But India's diaspora are still stuck with the American dream. You see, it's very difficult to have, I don't know, Indian dream or, you know, we can talk about that. The third one on the river is very important, and this I've argued in my books and all, that you need to reconceptualize river. The word Nodi is much older concept than river. You get in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And for a Nodi to be Nodi, you need three things: Pran, Atta, Shakti. Okay? These are three things you need. Bring that into modern conceptualization of river. Myself and Jayanta Bandyopadhyay of Kolkata, we made it into four. It's an acronym, WEBs. You need four things for a river to be river. And it matches with Atta, Pran, and Shakti. And that is WEBs. So first, W is water. Second is energy. B is biodiversity. And S is sediment. Without these four things, there's no river. So when you say, I want to share water, you know, river water sharing. So India and Bangladesh, they sit together and they share water. Where is the sediment? Where is biodiversity? You can't tell the fish, you take 50%, you remain in India, and 50%, let your children be on this side. You can't do that. So those who do the policy making, they have no understanding what the river is. So, and that's the reason we end up with the problems that we have. So if you reconceptualize all this, probably we can work. The third, the final one is balancing. We are not balancing India and China. No. Take away this balance of power out of this realist concept out of your head. Try to create newer concepts. These are too big. How can we balance them? It's too heavy, Baba. It's impossible to balance these two elephants or whatever, you know. So we are not balancing at all. What we are doing is we are having relationship with both, and it's possible. Look at, you know, India and China with all the media hype of their differences. You know, look at some of the things that they have done together. Look at BRICS. They are together in BRICS. Don't forget, in the Ukraine-Russian war, they have always been together in Russia-Ukraine war. Read S. Jayashankar's book, The India Way, believe it or not, and you will see what multipolarity is all about. He uses the multipolarity word more than 50 times, I think. And he makes it very clear, it's India way. Just read S. Jayashankar's book and it will tell you where India is heading with all its difficulties. So the point here is we are, you know, having relationship with all these countries, and I think that's the unique part of Bangladesh. Civilizationally, believe it or not, civilizationally, Bengal has always welcomed people from outside. It ekhono kore. You will see, we don't take them to the restaurants. In the Western world, it's different. They will take you to the restaurants. but not a Bangladeshi. They'll bring you home. It's a different civilization altogether. The only problem was the British overstayed. We never thought. But the Turks and the Afghans, they have absolutely melted with Bengal. Look at the language that we have. If you go to Turkey, Bangla bole par pe jabe. Shobji, tobji, these are all Turkish words. Chacha, chachi, these are all Turkish words. So the point here is only the British overstayed, and we have still in our head the Britain that we, it went back in 1947, but mind is still colonized. We need to decolonize our mind to understand where Bengal and Bangladesh can go. So as the 7th or 8th largest country in the world, I've pointed out in several places that if there is ever a UN reforms, not that India should not be a permanent member, it should be a permanent member. There's no reason why France and UK are permanent members now, because India's economy is bigger now than the economies of UK and France. Why are they sitting down, shamelessly? I don't know. They are not the big powers. So India naturally, even with these 5 permanent members, but if ever there's a reforms, and if the reform is in terms of demography, Bangladesh as 7th or 8th largest member should also be a permanent seat in. And believe it or not, maybe I will not live to see that. It only has to do with the economy. If it can bring the economy from the 35, wherever it is, to the first 10th, Bangladeshis will demand, as they have demanded with the 21st February, International Language Day, which is a unique factor. Just remember, it's a sad day for us, isn't it, 21st February? But it's now celebrates all the languages. Only Bengalis can do that. They have transformed a mourning into celebration. So I am hopeful. I'm not so much, I understand the general is tired, with all his experience. He has far bigger experience than me, but I am hopeful about the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'll try to just respond to a few questions. Professor Imtiaz has covered a lot of ground there. Graduation. Someone raised a question about Sami, I think, the graduation and the kind of diplomacy that is to really successfully navigate in that different world. And in that context, what role diplomacy could play? I think this is extremely important transition that we are going to face. It would be completely different from what we have experienced during the last 52, 53 years. Because for the last 53 years, we have been benefiting unilaterally from the international community. So we used to receive only. The moment we graduate, then we'll have to also give. And that give, or in what shape that will, transition will come, we don't know yet. But that would be a significant transition from our current state of economic relationship with the international community than what we have today. Two areas I think we need to understand from a realistic point of view, because when we talk about diplomacy, diplomacy is not theory, it's a practice, basically. So, two areas we need to seriously look at for reforms. One is domestic reforms, because, whatever we have now, we have to transform, because we have to be competitive at that point after graduation. We have to be more productive, because nobody is going to do us any favor. We'll have to navigate or swim in the open sea. So for that, we have to develop our own capacity. And there, I think, the economists are here. Most of you are economists, as I understand. So economists will have to do a lot of things. Where do we get the resources, both human resources and other resources, from how do we generate resources from our domestic sources so that we can be productive, more productive, and more competitive? Because we'll have to live on those two basic elements. Then the second area that we'll have to look at, our diplomacy will change. And somebody has raised the issue. We will have to renegotiate all our agreements or trade agreements that we have now, because those were done, and we used to get preferential kind of treatment from the international community under the WTO rules. Whenever we become graduate, that we'll have to negotiate from a very different plane. And how are we capable for that? Yes, we can do that. But now the question is, we have to have a kind of domestic consensus, because the reforms that we are talking, reforms on taxation, finance, banking, education, skills, these are all big ticket reforms. And I think for any government to do that kind of reforms, a kind of consensus would be required, because these are very hard decisions. And the whole of society approach should be there, because if the people don't understand, if the people don't cooperate, then these reforms cannot be done. So this is the challenge that we are facing as we are graduating by 2026. And I'm not talking about the challenge in the outside world, because even with India, we have now preferential treatment for sending our products under two. One is SAFTA, another is bilateral. So we are getting, for China, most of the countries are giving us the benefits, unilateral benefits, that concessional benefits that we get. All of them will go, investment, migration, the borrowing that we do from outside, the aid or development assistance, everything would have to be recalibrated, reorganized. So this is a tough job, and I can tell you, Professor Imtiaz has mentioned, but I'm saying it from a different perspective, we have to be really professional, because we have to negotiate. International environment is basic, it's not a charity. It's a hard, interest-based give and take. So we have to have we have to make the diplomacy professional. And by the way, I should also mention, diplomacy doesn't start or end in Foreign Office. It starts from the head of the government down to the people, because everybody is a stakeholder in the diplomacy, and everybody have to be on the same page to be successful as a nation in doing diplomacy. Two quick comment. Sanctions. Sanction is a tool for aggressive diplomacy that we do. And even India practices that. China practices that. So there are many countries around, the US, UK, I'm not talking about that. So sanction is a tool for aggressive diplomacy, and that is done. And that will, whenever it will come, we don't know, but that depends sometime on bilateral choices, sometime unilateral choices, sometime collective choices. United Nations can put sanctions, US can do that, India can do that, China can do that. So we have to be careful about the norms or the operating rules with each and every country and with each and every partner, just to avoid sanctions. And it can come to any country depending on the situation. Features, I think we have already mentioned about that. You can see the global environment is transforming in such a way that for countries like us, it's very difficult now, because UN is our last kind of, you can say, destination for promoting our interest or enjoying the guardrails to protect our national interest. On the Rohingya issue, United Nations is only supporting us from a humanitarian perspective. Could it help us to solve the problem? No, because there is logjammed at the UN Security Council. Unless and until Russia, China, they come on board or come into a consensus and all veto-wielding powers agree, no solution can be obtained with regard to Rohingyas or Myanmar, for example. So we are, and SAARC was another regional forum, although we didn't do anything on the security side, but a moral kind of pressure could have been brought into by if SAARC had survived. But now SAARC is kind of in the ICU. So we are on our own, basically. So, and from trade point of view, just I missed one point. Bangladesh is possibly one of the countries that we don't have many trade agreements. We have some bilaterals, But in terms of multilateral arrangements, we are still going alone. We don't have much. On the other side, just from eastern side, Myanmar is a part of RCEP, which is a grouping of 15 countries with $28 trillion economy. On the other side, India is growing. India has FTA with ASEAN. They have FTA working on FTA with the European Union. So India is a big market itself, and at the same time, they are working on having more spaces outside. And in that context, we could be squeezed out of the market if we are not really rising with the tide. And in that case, it would be difficult. Bilaterally, yes, we can do it. But for a country like us, small countries, bilateralism doesn't really give us much benefit. So we must look or explore for multilateral forums, multilateral benefits, and that would give us benefits in real sense, and also give us some space to negotiate for those things. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I must thank the organizer for inviting me. Sometimes I ask myself, what am I doing here? And I was still asking, what am I doing here? As Professor Imtiaz is already almost weeding me out that I'm tired, but I can assure you, sir, I'm not tired, I'm retired. I have not said so far to myself that I'm now tired, so therefore I'm retired and tired, so forget about it. My understanding is, of course, from my study and observations and my own thoughts. I've not been a diplomat like him or teacher, IR teacher. I was trying to be student of IR, but then I was pushed out and I ran away to the military. Again, thanks very much for the organizers. I would just, I think everything has been said, but there are some things which I would like to just put it. We have been talking, we have been discussing much. Bangladesh had some clout, still have. Some of the Asian, not Asian, African countries mostly, of course, 1 or 2 Middle Eastern countries, with the presence of the military. And that is one of the very big tools for the diplomacy, very big tool. I visited one of the largest African country where our peacekeepers are still there. And I found that how those peacekeepers of the various countries are being used for diplomacy, for business. And when I came back, I gave a 3-4 pages report to Army headquarters. And I believe that they must have taken it to the foreign ministry. And there's one country that I visited and I was amazed at what a resourceful country that was. And that's known as Ivory Coast. And our troops were there, I think still there, for a long time. And they were loved and liked by the local people. And they were local, when I was talking to the local people, they said, why don't we invest here? Like medicine, like agriculture. Believe you that we didn't have any diplomat. We didn't have any consul. I think the nearest was probably either in Nigeria, or Nigeria. It was very difficult from Nigeria to go and cover. So that's what I'm saying. We have some resources which we call military diplomacy, which military all over the world, I mean, big power or small power uses military diplomacy. Look at India, for example. So, of course, India is very big. But I saw even Nepal is using it. Because once upon a time, Nepal had one of the largest contributor in the peacekeeping. So it's one place which is totally ignored, I believe. I'm talking about in front of a veteran diplomat, and I'm also talking about in front of a teacher, and who has been writing numerous books, both sides. So I would request you to always consider that the tools that you have, not only just sitting in Dhaka and saying that, oh, this thing has happened, that thing has happened. I don't think any head of this government or state ever visited in those places where our troops are there, who could contribute a maximum in supporting the diplomacy. In many African countries, the Indians have established, because troops were there. Last was probably, I think, one of the African countries which produces one of the best diamond, probably Liberia or somewhere. The Indian businessmen, diamond businessmen, followed their troops in that country. So what I'm trying to say is that we have a lot of avenues to really extend our diplomatic areas, not only. Second thing that I would like to point out, if you don't take me, I'm not political animal. Do we have any consensus in our country on foreign policy? Do we know what kind of negotiations, what kind of the head of state is going, or the head of the government is going and discussing issues? We don't know. Never discussed in our parliament. Never discussed in parliament. I don't know. They may be knowing, but we don't know. Like, for example, what is exactly happening, or what exactly happened few years back when the Rohingyas were here, and on third month we heard that everybody is going back because we have already discussed with military junta. Then I told that it's, I don't know, how could I express, asking Yahya Khan to please take your, you go back and roll back the others, 1 crore in India, bring them back and bring all Mukti Bahinis back, sit in the table. It never happens. Because the military which has perpetuated genocide, you're talking to them that please take these victims back. It never happens. But it didn't happen. Then I said 10 years, now 7 years have passed. We don't have consensus. We really have no consensus, political consensus within ourselves. I don't know if it is there, I don't know. There are political people, political parties which are sitting outside. Whatever is the reason, historical, every time it comes up historical, if we keep on going in history, then probably we have to accuse who was the person who really accentuated Clive and bring him back. So therefore, we have to look forward. There's no consensus in either in diplomacy or in the economic field or in the whatever you may call it. But you look in the other countries, look at the other countries around us. Look at Nepal, forget about India. Look at Nepal. They sit together, discuss, talk, and mind you, I met a Prime Minister of Nepal who was wanted for 20 years. And that is Mr. Pushpa Kumar Dal. Didn't he massacre? He did. Didn't his people killed? They did. They wanted to kill even the king. So, but the gentleman has been leading, still leading the country. So you can't remain in one particular line. That's it and no further. We suffer. We are suffering. We don't know. If the Americans come, some party is very happy. They just smile and they say, well, we have discussed something, we will not tell you. The others say, well, why they have come? So the point is if we have to decide, do we have any consensus on Myanmar? What to do now? We don't have. Now we are saying that we should work with India and China. India would work for its own interest because India does not have yet a good relation with the Arakan army or United Arakan League because they have massacred in 2009. So if you are interested, try to find out and read Operation Leech, what they have done, and they have not forgotten. Yet, I won't say that they would be inimical because they said we will welcome all kind of investment. Therefore, we have to, as I said, we have to evolve our own sort of methodology, how we deal with them in future, how we deal with them others. We always say, well, China is dealing with both. That's what their policy is. They deal with both. Today, if there's one party here, China is very friendly. The second party would come, do you think China will say, to hell with you? I'm not going to work with you? They will. Therefore, I think instead of being reactive, let us have a proactive foreign policy. And that policy only come as, I believe, a retired soldier, not tired. I believe there has to be a national consensus on making foreign policy. Foreign policy is never rigid, as I have read. It's not. Even Henry Kissinger says that foreign policy is never rigid. It has to change, change, and change. Thank you very much.
We had plans to take another round of questions, but as you can see, it's difficult to control men, right? I have to play the gender card at least once. And it was interesting sitting here. I thought I'll be able to control them. They're uncontrollable. We know that. We can know that. So in the end, I'd just like to wrap up with a couple of food for thought. Number one, as we can see that increasingly we know, we understand how we are connected with each other. Therefore, even in a big conference that SANEM organized on economy, and Bangladesh, we're creating possible future for creating a possible future for Bangladesh and how to diversify economic opportunities and so many other areas. Despite that, you have to talk about what are the foreign policy implications of that. There's a famous saying, right now I forgot the name, is the economy stupid? There's this famous saying, right? That it's got Clinton, I think. Yeah, Clinton back in mid-1990s, he said that it's the economy that runs the world. Unfortunately, in today's world, we can see it is not only economy, but also there are political overtures to that economy. So a couple of issues that already pointed out, and if I may summarize that, how Bangladesh should figure out its relationship with India and China. So there are three schools of thought, as Sir said, that we cannot balance. So, but there are a group of scholars who think that we need to balance our relationship with India and China. There's another group of scholars who said we need to hedge, right? Hedge our relationship with India and China. But I would also say that you being in a generation that have like 50, 60 years ahead of you, also look at the pattern of recent Bangladesh's engagement with India, China, and rest of the world that we are seeing right before our eyes. The rise of a Bangladesh that increasingly says no. Just 2 or 3 days back, there was an article saying that Rohingyas are floating and Bangladesh says no, that they are not going to take any more Rohingyas. And this is not the first instance. Even before that, back in 2020, in so many international instances, Bangladesh said, no, this does not go with our national interest and we are not going to say yes to this. So there is this rise of a new assertive Bangladesh. This is something I believe will be the driving force for your generation. Then also another issue that has been also identified, graying of the great powers. So graying, literally, great powers are losing their workforce. And look at Japan, look at Italy, the countries which resist immigration. They are almost at the verge of being extinct, and they will not be able to keep their culture, their language, their way of life intact if they do not know how to sort of increase sheer number of population, where Bangladesh is so far ahead. And here, another issue that I wrote down, in fact, Sir pointed out after that next area for your generation to look forward to would be Africa. This is something we often forget. We have this myopia. We think we have this, again, colonized mind. We think Kalo, Africa, dark continent. We need not go there, but that is where all the countries are now heading, because look at the world population growth and its trajectory. Africa is going to offer more opportunities for you to sort of flourish than any other continent. So all the other countries, all the other policymakers, they have identified and they're going there. ASEAN does not even mention the word Rohingya. right? And so how can we look forward to any international institution to solve our problem? So we need to work with a number of actors to go to some kind of resolution of the crisis, to go to some kind of acknowledgement that yes, Bangladesh is hosting Rohingyas, Bangladesh is hosting out of benevolent nature. We tend to... Yes, it's working again, yeah. We tend to, feed our, our guests. We let them overstay. We have done that before, but there is also a capacity, a question of developing our resources for our own population. And then, of course, last but not the least, we often do not see the geopolitical significance of the country and the locational reality. Throughout 2023, people argued, whether that was on Twitter or in other media, that, okay, Bangladesh does not have any geopolitical significance. But then my question would be, why do great powers flock in Bangladesh? Why Bangladesh is having a security dialogue with Europe, security dialogue with UK, with America? Why are we having political dialogue with these countries? Why are we having economic dialogue with these countries? So you can as well, leave the country. But the locational reality in 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s foreign policy discourse, it is to be written that Bangladesh is a victim of geography because Bangladesh did not have access to the southern, Bay of Bengal. But now Bangladesh actually, as I mentioned initially, it is the gateway to South Asia. It can give access to a larger part of South Asia than any other part of the part of South Asia. Remember, deep sea port. India has about 3 deep sea ports only, and India's eastern deep sea port is much down south, and therefore Matarbari would be a game changer. It's going to be one of the major transit hub for this part of the northeast South Asian part of the region. So there are so many areas that we need to really look into and study. Remember, international relations, we have one student, we studied IR, it's not because of that I'm saying that, but you cannot learn international politics listening to only CNN, BBC, and major outlets. And that is why after the end of the First World War, this was established as a discipline that we need to study more systematic way about wars, why wars occur, why certain conflicts erupt into greater war, but others do not. And therefore, we may always have I would say outsider's perspective about how international politics may look like, but there is a deeper understanding. Just like in economics, you need to go through so many theories to understand what can happen. And that is why great powers are here to stay. It's not because Vietnam can only provide them competitive pricing. They will go to Vietnam, but there are other certain factors for which they will be coming here. Our options would be that not only to develop in economic sense, but also provide them with other kind of facilities and other kind of opportunities that, yes, this is why Bangladesh is significant. As Sir said, that we can change our friends, we can change our partners even, but we cannot change the fact of geography. So Bangladesh is here with 170 million robust population, and therefore they will be coming. We have to learn to bargain properly with them. That yes, if you want, go to Vietnam tomorrow. They won't go, believe me. So therefore, this is something we need a mixture of not only industry, academia collaboration, but interdisciplinary understanding of how to develop, how to create a developed Bangladesh. Thank you.
Small world. Thank you very much.
Sir, excellent, sir. Sir, আমি তো আপনাদের সবই লিখেছি।